earthquake in China when 2000.
Oh, that's a great example. Thank you. Coco, can you give us an example?
In Jan, maybe in June or maybe in July or August have杜苏芮.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I understand. Thank you. That was a good example. Theodore, what about you? Can you give an example of a real natural disaster event?
Sorry, teacher. I didn't go last class.
No, that's okay. Do you still know like a random natural disaster? Do you just know one off the top of your head? It's okay if you don't.
A fire broke in the house.
Okay. Yeah, that could become a natural disaster. Thank you. That was really good. Rebecca, can you tell us one? Rebecca, can you give us an example? Rebecca, can you hear me? Okay, I'm just gonna assume technical difficulty so we can move on for now. Thank you everyone for participating, and also it'd be nice if you could switch on your cameras, everyone.
So this week's conversation is to talk about something exciting that happened during your week. So, Coco, can you tell me something exciting that happened during your week?
I think is I do my homework. This week's homework is my favorite subject.
Really, that must be very exciting to see, to do it. Thank you for answering the question. David, can you talk about something exciting that happened during your week?
I catch some sea fish and sea shrimps. They look like the fish in the lake, but it can't live in the water without salt. And I do some exciting, difficult programming questions. Yeah.
It sounds like you had a very good week. Thank you for answering the question.
So
Theodore.
one note before we move. Sorry, one note before we move on, David. It's not catched, it's caught. Okay, so whenever you're talking about past tense, it's caught for like catching fish or catching starfish or something like that, okay? Go.
That's a very good note by Snigdha. And so, moving on from that, Theodore, can you talk about something exciting that happened during your week?
I go shopping with my friends, and we have a good time.
That sounds like something that'd be very exciting. Hanging out with friends can be really good. Thank you for answering the question. Um, Rebecca, can you talk about something exciting that happened during your week?
Last Wednesday, I went to the park. I flew kites, and I played games with my friend.
That sounds like that'd be very fun and exciting to do. Thank you for answering the question. So, this week's lesson, we are going to be reading a book called The Big One. And so, the way it will go is that I will read a page and I will ask a student to repeat that after I am done reading it. So, with that out of the way, let's start reading. The bell rang for recess, and Sal and his friends swarmed onto the playground. It was the last day of school, and excited shouts carried over the playground like birdsong at dawn. Sal was impatient. First thing tomorrow, he and his Uncle Mikey were driving to their family cabin in the woods near Lake Lacuna. The lake meant fishing and plenty of it. There was one thing though. There was a no technology rule at the cabin. You mean that there is not even a TV? Sal's friend Ricky was shocked. So, David, can you read this page?
Okay. The bell rang for recess, and Sal and his friends swarmed onto the playground. It was the last day of school, and excited shouts carried over the playground like birdsong at dawn. Sal was impatient. First, huh? First thing tomorrow, he and his uncle Mickey were driving to their family cabin in the woods near Lake Lu, Lutre, Lu,
Lacuna.
Lacuna. No. Lacuna. The lake meant fishing and plenty of it. There was one thing, though there was a no technology rule at cabin. Cabin. You mean there's not even a TV? Sal's friend Ricky was shocked.
Good job, David. I liked how you corrected yourself at, I think it was, I don't remember, but this is pronounced meant. So can you say that, David?
Meant.
Good job, David. Thank you for reading this page.
Okay, so this is the next page. There are 2 pages, so I'll just read the first one and call someone, and then also the second one and call someone. Sal shook his head no. Well, at least you can play video games, right? Like I said, no technology. It's the family rule. We go there to fish, Sal said with a shrug. This year I'm going to land the big one. It's this enormous catfish that's been living in our lake for years. Ricky wrinkled his nose. Ugh, not my idea of fun. Give me a call when you get back. I'll be playing games on my computer. The next morning, Sal watched from his bedroom window as Uncle Mikey's pickup truck rattled to a halt outside his apartment building. Uncle Mikey spotted him and waved, his arm outstretched. Got time for a coffee? Sal's dad asked his younger brother as he led him to the kitchen. Just a quick one. I can feel those fish biting already. So, Theodore, can you read this page for me, please?
Sal shook his hand. No. Well, at least you can play video games, right? Like I said, there's no technology. It's a family rule. We go there to fish. Sal said with a shrug. This year I'm going to land the big one. It's this enormous catfish that's been living in the lake for years. Ricky wrinkled his nose. Oh, not my idea of fun. Give me a call when you get back. I will be playing games on your computer. The next morning, Sal watched from his bedroom window as Uncle Mackie pickup rattled to a halt outside his apartment building. Uncle Mikey stooped him at and what? His arm outstretched. Go time for coffee. Sal's dad asked his young brother as he led him to the kitchen. Just a quick one. I can feel those fish biting already.
Thank you, Theodore. That was really good. I really liked how you read that, your tone of it. But also, so there's a couple of words that are kind of hard to pronounce in here. So this word where it says there's no technology, it's pronounced technology. Can you say technology? The
Technology.
one, yes, technology. And then underneath, like it's this enormous catfish. Can you say enormous?
Enormous.
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 Yes, perfect. And then there's outstretched. Uncle Mikey spotted him, his arm outstretched. Can you say outstretched?
Outstretched.
Yes, perfect. Thank you. That was really good. And then the next page is on the drive up to the cabin, Uncle Mikey and Sal chatted over the racket from the pickup. It grumbled like an old mule as it climbed up the steep, winding road. They finally drove into the little town of Lacuna. Uncle Mikey pulled up outside Pete's general store. We'd better pick up a few supplies. Pete was behind the counter. head buried in a newspaper, but he looked up with a grin when he saw them come in. The wall behind him was covered in photographs of fish. Well, look what the cat dragged in. I haven't seen you guys in a while. Coco, can you read this page for me, please?
On the drive up to the camping, Uncle Mikey and Sal chatted over the racket from the pickup. It grumbled.
You can keep going. It grumbled.
It grumbled like an old wolf as it climbed up steep, winding road. They finally drove into the little town of
Lacuna.
Lacuna. Uncle Mikey pulled up outside. Pete's
General.
general story. We'd better pick up a few supplies. Pete was behind the counter. Had buried in a newspaper, but he looked up with a grin when he saw them come in. The wall behind him was covered in photographs of fish. Well, look what's the cat dragged in. I haven't seen you guys in a while.
Yeah, that was good. Thank you, Coco. I liked how you read that and you also corrected yourself on some of the words. One thing though is that when it's like the second paragraph, the first sentence, it says they finally drove into the little town. Can you say town? Coco? Town, perfect. Then can you say supplies, like the last sentence of the second paragraph? Supplies. We'd better pick up a few supplies. Can you say supplies? Okay, thank you, Coco. That was good. We can move on.
Uncle Mikey shook Pete's hand. We're staying at the cabin for a few days, and we need some supplies. The fishing's not very good at the moment, but that could change, Pete said. What about the big one? Sal asked. You figure you're going to catch him? Pete chuckled. No one's managed it yet. The old fella even dragged one guy into the lake. Uncle Mikey smiled. That's just an old story. Pete winked at him. So what's your strategy? He asked Sal. To use the smelliest bait possible. Catfish sense their prey by smell, right? I've been reading up on it. Well, I think I can help you there, Pete said. Can you read this page, Rebecca?
Uncle Mickey shook Petey's hand. We're staying at the cabin for a few days, and we need some supplies. The fishing's not very good at the moment, but that could change, Petey said. What about the big one? Saul asked. You figure you're going to catch him, Kitty chuckled. No one's managed it yet. The old fella even dragged one guy into the lake. Uncle Mickey smiled. That's just an old story. Petey winked at him. So what's your strategy? He asked Saul. To use the smelliest bait possible. Catfish sense their way by smell, right? I've been reading up on it. Well, I think I can help you there, Petey said.
Good job, Rebecca. But this is pronounced pray,
Pray,
and this is pronounced Pete.
Petey.
Good job, Rebecca, and thank you for reading. When Sal and Uncle Mikey arrived at the cabin, they pushed open the creaky wooden door and brought their gear inside. Sal loved the old cabin. Above the fireplace, stuffed and mounted, was a catfish his father had hooked as a young boy. The fish was enormous, but its fins looked brittle with age. Maybe if I land the big one, he'll earn a place up there, Sal thought. Uncle Mikey and Sal followed the path down to the lake's edge, hoping to get a spot on the dock. There were already several people on the shore, rods in hand, but the dock was deserted. It didn't take them long to attach the bait to their hooks and cast out into the green water. Sal peered down, trying to see beneath the surface. Um, David, can you read this page? David?
Oh, I'm not here clearly at first. When
Oh,
Sal and Uncle Mickey arrived at cabin, they pushed open the creaky wooden door and brought their gear inside. Sal loved the old cabin. Above the fireplace, stuffed and malted, was the catfish his father had hooked as a young boy. The fish was enormous, but its fins looked brittle with age. Maybe I will. Maybe if I land the big one, he will earn a place up there. Sal thought. Uncle Mickey and Sal followed the path down to the lake's edge, hoping to get a spot on the dock. There were already several people on the shore, rods in hand, but the rock was deserted. It didn't take them long to attach the belt to their hooks and cast out into the green water. Sal breathed down, trying to see beneath the surface.
you did really good, David, but you pronounced some words it's wrong, so this is pronounced peered. So can you say that, David?
Period.
No, peered.
Period.
You don't pronounce the ed here as clearly as you are saying it. So instead of period, it'd be period. It's like try getting the E out. It's like don't hear the E as clearly.
Maybe the internet was not very good that time.
Okay. So then can you also pronounce bait
Bait,
and deserted?
deserted,
Dog
dog,
and mounted.
mounted.
And that is it. Other than that, you did really good, David, and thank you for reading. Snigdha.
My thing just blocked. Sorry. Okay, it's back. All right, so this sure beats being inside, Uncle Mikey said, gazing out at the woods surrounding the lake. We have your great-grandfather to thank. He built the cabin so he could hide away here and write in peace. Right? Sal asked, surprised. Uncle Mikey nodded. In his spare time, he wrote poems, and some of them were even published. Sal sat on the dock, dangling his feet, trying to imagine his great-grandfather writing in the cabin. Then it happened. A pull. At first he wasn't sure, but then the fish dragged at the line again. Sal sat up, his hands gripping his rod. Got one, he gasped, as the fish began to pull harder. Sal saw his line straining, and he tried to reach his reel to loosen the drag and let the fish run with the line. He hauled on his rod, and then the line went slack. The fish had disappeared. The line couldn't hold him. That must have been a whopper, Uncle Mikey whistled. Theodore, can you read this page, please?
This sure beats being inside, Uncle Mikey sighed, gazing out at the wood, sporting surrounding the lake. We have your grandfather to thank. He built the cabin so that he could hide away here and write in peace. Right? Sal asked, surprised. Uncle Mikey nodded. In his script time, he wrote poems, and some of them were even published. Sal sat on the dock, dangling his feet and trying to imagine his great-grandfather writing in the cabin. When it happened uphill, at first he wasn't sure, but then the fish disagreed at the line again. Sal sat up, his hands gripping his rod. Got one, he gasped as the fish began to pull harder. Sal saw his line starting, and he tried to reach his reel to loosen the struck and let the fish run with the line. He held on his throat, and then the line went slack. The fish had disappeared. The line couldn't hold him. That must have been a whooper. Uncle Mikey wasted.
That was really good. I really liked how you got through that all without any help. But also some of the words here are kind of difficult again. So you got a little bit of a mispronunciation. So the first one was spare. So like in the third paragraph, the first sentence, it says Uncle Mikey nodded in his spare time. So can you say spare?
Spare.
Good. And then it goes on to say he wrote poems. So it's pronounced poems.
Poems.
Poems. Good job. And then in the fifth paragraph, it says at first he wasn't sure, but then the fish dragged. Can you say dragged?
Drag.
Dragged. Okay. And then the next one in the sixth paragraph, it says Sal saw his line straining. Can you say straining?
Straining.
Straining. Good. So that's all that you got wrong, I'm pretty sure. So thank you. That was really good, Theodore. And then the next page is Sal was disappointed, but now his heart was racing. He quickly tied on a new hook and sinker and cast his line back into the water. Although he and Uncle Mikey stuck at it until the sun had set, neither of them got another bite. The next day, they went back to Pete's to buy some stronger line and new bait. They decided to try a different fishing spot, and they even went fishing at night, but the catfish just weren't biting. Sometimes it happens, said Uncle Mikey. Sal was starting to think that Ricky was right. Maybe he should have just stayed home and played computer games. The night before they were due to leave, Sal stared at the stuffed fish on the wall and sighed. He had just one more opportunity, so he'd better make the most of it. Coco, can you read this page for me?
Sal was disappointed, but now his heart was Ricky. He quickly tied on a new hook and sinker and cast his line back into the water. Also, he and Uncle Mackie stuck at it until the sun had set. Neither of them got another bite. The next day, they went back to Patty's to buy some stronger line and new baits. They
Decided
to try a different fishing sport, and they even went fishing at night. But the catfish just weren't biting. Sometimes it happens, said Uncle Mikey. Sal was starting to think Ricky was right. Maybe he should have just stayed at home and played computer games. The night before they were going to leave, Sal
stared
stared at the stuffed fish on the wall and
sighed.
sighed. He had just one more opportunity, so he'd better make the most of it.
That was really good. Thank you, Coco. So in the first paragraph, you also pronounced a couple words wrong, but in the first paragraph, it's pronounced like Sal was disappointed, but now his heart was racing. Can you say racing?
Racing.
Racing. Okay, good. And then in the second paragraph, it says in the last word is bite. Can you say bite?
Bite.
Good job. Okay. And then the last one, it's the last paragraph. It says he had just one more opportunity. Can you say opportunity?
Opportunity.
Yeah, good job. Thank you. That was really good.
After an early breakfast the next day, Sal and Uncle Mikey raced down to the lake. They were trying a different site which Pete had recommended farther down the shore. There was early morning mist on the lake, and the water was as smooth as glass. Sal had to admit it was beautiful, even if they were probably going to leave empty-handed. He stared at the water, willing a fish to appear. Then finally it happened, the bite he'd been waiting for. Sal's reel started to click, and his rod dipped. There was a tremble on the line, then a long pull. "Got something!" he hollered. His rod bowed over, and his reel continued clicking as the fish took the line. Sal began winding it in. Rebecca, can you read this page?
After an early breakfast the next day, Sal and Uncle Mackie raced down to the lake. They were trying a different site, which Pete had recommended farther down the shore. There was early morning mist on the lake, and the water was as smooth as glass. Sal had to admit it was beautiful, even if they were probably going to leave empty-handed. He stared at the water, willing a fish to appear. Then finally it happened. The bite he'd been waiting for. Sal's reel started to click, and his rod dipped. There was a tremble on the line, then a long pull. Got something, he hollered. His rod bowed over, and his reel continued clicking as the fish took the line. Saul began winding it in.
Good job, Rebecca. I can see that you're good at this as how fast you're reading, so that's a really good sign. So thank you for reading this page.
Okay. The next page says, "Don't reel it in yet." Uncle Mikey dropped his rod and came over to help. When the fish stops dragging, wind it in a little. Sal nodded. "It's a big one." He could sense the fish struggling as it tugged on the line, trying to escape. He stepped back from the water's edge. Still his reel clicked as the fish took the line. Then it paused for a moment, and Sal wound it in, but not for long. The fish fought back. The rod was bending under the strain. At the surface, he saw a flash of a dark tail and a glimpse of a white belly. The fish wasn't giving in easily, and Sal's arms were getting tired. Uncle Mikey was at his side, ready to help, but Sal wanted to bring this one in on his own. Sal heaved his rod up and back, and then he let it drop down as he wound in the line some more. The fish pulled away once more. Again, Sal raised his rod, arms straining. Now he could sense the fish was becoming exhausted. David, can you read this page, please?
Don't reel it in yet. Uncle Mickey dropped his rod and came over to help. When the fish stops struggling, wind it in a little. Saul nodded. It's a big one. He could sense the fish struggling at its tugged on the line, trying to escape. He stepped back from the water's edge. Still, his feet clicked as the fish took the line. Then it paused for a moment, and Saul would it in, but not for long. The fish fought back. The rod was bending under the strain. At the surface, he saw the fish of dark tail and a gem, 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 glim,
Glimpse.
glim,
Glimpse.
glimpse, what?
Glimpse, yeah.
Glimpse of white belly. The fish wasn't giving in easily, and Sal's arms were getting tired. Uncle Mickey was at his side ready to help, but Saul wanted to bring this one in on his own. Saul heaved his rod up and back. Then he let it drop down, and as he wound in the line some more, the fish pulled away once more. Again Saul released his rod, arms straining. Now he could sense the fish was become exhausted.
Yeah. Thank you, David. That was really good. You got most of the words right. And so the only thing is in the last paragraph, in the second sentence, it's pronounced raised his rod in the second to last sentence of the last paragraph.
I raised. Yeah.
Raised, yeah. I think you said released, so I was like a little confused. Yeah.
I think
Mhm.
what the last word said.
Yeah, the last word. I was gonna get to that just now. The last word is pronounced exhausted.
Exhausted.
Exhausted. Perfect. Thank you. That was really good. Thank you, David.
But I don't speak raised as released.
Oh, I heard released. I don't know. I'm sorry. That was probably my internet or something like that. But thank you. That was good. Okay, so the next page is the fish was at the surface now, splashing and turning over, its tail flapping. It was a catfish. It had been beaten, and Sal knew it. He kept winding the reel, staggering backward away from the water. Wow, that's a monster, Uncle Mikey called. He took hold of the line and hauled the fish back into the shallow water. Sal put his rod down, a huge grin spreading across his face. It was the big one. It had to be. Okay. Theodore, can you read this passage or like page for me, please?
The fish was at the surface now, splashing and turning over, its tail flapping. It was a catfish. It had been bitten, and Sal knew it. He kept winding the reel, struggling backward away from the water. Wow, that's a monster. Uncle Mikey called. He took hold of the line and held the fish into the shallow water. Sal put his rod down, a hunger grin spreading across his face. It was the big one. It had to be.
Good job, Theodore. That was good. In the first paragraph, though, the last sentence, it says he kept winding the reel. And it says staggering. Can you say staggering?
Staggering.
Staggering. Good. And then in the second sentence of the second paragraph, it says he took hold of the line and hauled. Can you say hauled?
Hold.
Hold. Okay. And then the last one, it says, I think you may have said. I don't really know. Okay, but I think you got the rest right. So that was good. Thank you. We can move.
The fish's head was huge, with long whiskers and blank eyes. Its skin was the color of cold steel, and its body was at least 3 feet long. It flopped in the shallow water, rubbery mouth opening and shutting. "That's the big one, all right," Uncle Mikey exclaimed. "I've never caught a fish that big." He clapped Sal on the back. "Good job." Sal nodded, but now seeing the fish flopping at his feet, he wasn't sure what he wanted. The catfish was old. It had been in the lake for years. If they kept it, the legend would end there, and the fish would be just another ornament gathering dust above the mantel. Sal made up his mind. "Quick, Uncle Mikey, take a picture with your camera before we put it back." So, Coco, can you read this page?
The fish's head was huggy, with long whiskers and black eyes. His skin was the color of cold steel, and its body was at least 3 feet long. His flopped in the shallow water. Rubbery mouth opened the shutting. "That's the big one, all right," Uncle Mikey exclaimed. "I've never caught a fish that big." He clapped Sal on the back. "Good job, son." Nodded, but now, seeing the fish flop and his field, he wasn't sure what he wanted. The catfish was old. It had been in this lake for years. If they kept it, the legend would end there, and the fish would be just another ornament gathering dust above the mantel. Sam made up his mind. "Quick, Uncle Mackie, take a picture with your camera before we put it back."
You did really good, Coco, but this, well, is pronounced legend.
Legend.
Um, wait, I think that's all. That's wrong. Yeah. Um, good job, Coco. Thank you for reading. Uncle Mikey raised his eyebrows, but then he understood. He took a couple of photos of the fish before pulling the hook out of its mouth. Struggling, they lifted the fish, waded into the water, and lowered it in. The catfish flopped around at first, then hastily disappeared beneath the surface. Sal and Uncle Mikey packed up their fishing gear and headed back to the cabin. It was time to drive home, but first they stopped at Pete's. Well, nothing all week, and then the big one. Good job, kid, Pete chuckled. Um, Rebecca, can you read this page?
Uncle Mikey raised his eyebrows, but then he understood. He took a couple of photos of the fish before pulling the hook out of his mouth. Struggling, they lifted the fish, waded into the water, and lowered it in. The catfish flopped around at first, then hastily disappeared beneath the surface. Sal and Uncle Mikey packed up their fishing gear and headed back to the cabin. It was time to drive home, but first they stopped at Pete's. Well, nothing all week, and then the big one. Good job, kid, Pete chuckled.
Good job, Rebecca. Thank you for reading this page.
Okay, so this is the last page. I took a picture, Uncle Mikey said. I'll send you a copy for your wall. Excellent, Pete said, smiling. As Uncle Mikey's truck rattled down the highway, Sal reflected on the battle with the big fish. He thought about the way it lay there, thick tail flapping, still fighting to the very end. The photographs might show the size of the fish and prove that he caught it, but they wouldn't tell the whole story. Maybe I could follow in my great-grandfather's footsteps, Sal thought. He could be creative and write a poem, something descriptive that brought the expertise or experience to life. A picture in words about the time he landed a legend, but let it live on. David, can you read this page for me, please?
I took a picture, Uncle Mickey said. I will send you a copy for your wall. Excellent, Pete said, smiling. As Uncle Mickey's truck rattled down the highway, so reflect on the bottle with the big fish. He thought about the way it lay there. Think tail flapping, still fighting to the very end. The photographs might show the size of the fish and prove that he had caught it, but they wouldn't tell the whole story. Maybe I could follow in my great-grandfather's footsteps, Sal thought. He could be creative and write a poem, something descriptive that brought the experience to life. A picture in words about the time and he landed a land but let it live on.
Good job, David. That was really good. The only thing I would change about that is that in the I would just change the fact that no, I think you did everything good. Oh yeah, in the last paragraph it says experience to life. Can you say experience?
Experience.
Yes, perfect. That's good. You did really good. Thank you.
We would go over the vocabulary, but it is currently 10:30 p.m., so we do not have enough time for that, which is sad. So we will go over this week's homework. And so this week's homework is to give an example of a time when you felt like giving up but didn't. That is all for this week's class, and thank you for attending this class. Hope you have a good week.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Okay. Ugh. That took a long time just to get past the book.